very beginning of the concept phase, the very first discussions were, are you going to play Alex again or not? And I think part of it was that allure of going, you've just played this character and built them up to this huge amount of power. Where do you go next?
Make him the villain, make him the enemy, but make him a really interesting enemy, and then create a new protagonist. Right up front, you have two interesting characters. You have James Heller, who is, a family man who's lost his family to the virus, and you have Alex Mercer, who's responsible for unleashing that virus, who infects James Heller.
You hate him so much that your desire to take him down is an immense sort of burning fire within you, but at the same time, you're also terrified and thinking, I don't know if I've actually got what it takes. I don't know if I can actually beat this guy.
The simple story of the David versus Goliath, the Luke versus Darth Vader, that kind of story just makes it very clear cut, and you know what your goal is. You are out there to murder your maker.
The brand new weapon power is something very different than any of the weapon powers from the first game. We're using tendrils to reach out in the environment, smash things into other things, or stringing up enemies out in the world to be vulnerable for further attacks.
They give the player the feeling of really affecting the world. You end up with all these props and pieces of enemies and stuff strung up and hanging. So it really feels like you as a player, you cause damage, a lot of damage.
Dismemberment is probably my favorite. And with tendril power, you can actually rip an enemy in half. Dismemberment never felt so good.
The amount of fun that you can have in the sandbox area of just stringing cars up, stringing people up, you forget about the game. You just want to go around and keep doing that. That's my favorite thing by far, and it looks amazing.
In regards to the Ultimate Power Fantasy, there's two aspects of that I want to touch on. If you just want to button mash and not worry about strategy and you just want to see a bunch of cool shit, bodies, limbs flying all over the place, blood and explosions, you can have that. Or if you want that tactical battle of back and forth, there's a strategic reason for every attack in the game, for every button press. Like, that's where the depth comes into the gameplay of having a usage for everything.
Just the ability to now dodge more, block more, engage combat in a way that is much more visceral and more exciting, and then combined with the dismemberment system, it should be a lot easier for people to come in and play it for the first time.
One of the things we identified from Portal 1 that wasn't very fun was fighting 5 guys at the same time. It's fun to fight 5 guys, but not if they're all hitting you at the same time.
So by having the command ability, when you have those 5 guys on screen and they're going to attack you, you can now hit the button and get a block, or hit the button and flip over the guy, things of that nature. So it gives the player a lot more control to combat and into the battlefield. Instead of reacting to getting hit, the player can now react to the threat of danger and respond accordingly.
They're pulling off getting a controlled player experience where the player can completely control the combat dynamics and not ever feel like it's unfair, but maintain that sort of level of chaos and excitement that we hit in Prototype 1.
Each change is somewhat micro, but the effect that it has on the overall game experience is huge, and I think that's getting me incredibly excited to see the results that the combat team are actually generating and to make the game feel so much more rewarding.
The reasons we went to 3 zones for Prototype 2 was feedback from the players. They really wanted a better visual world. They wanted a world that they could really be immersed in. And by going to 3 distinct zones, what it meant was that we could give a greater level of memory and resources and just focus and attention that our artists could deliver to each zone to make them absolutely stunning and beautiful and a rich environment to play with.
It's enabled us to provide the player with different challenges, different experiences, and give the player something unexpected whenever they progress forwards.
We wanted to have 3 areas where we could have sort of a military zone, a pristine zone, and an infected zone, and have them stand on their own.
We really set out to have each zone have a very distinct emotion as you play through them, a different look and feel. When you go to the green zone, we wanted to make sure that you felt that the military was very much there, keeping the city streets safe and making the infection stay at bay. So you get a greater military population, you get less destroyed buildings, less papered over buildings. They tried to make it look pretty and nice.
Our responsibility is sell the story, sell the mood and the feel of the location. So you will see lots of guys sitting on the sidewalks, leaning against the buildings, kind of hiding.
We also focused on having a dynamic exposure so that you could have dark areas and bright areas, and having the camera really adjust for that. So it didn't feel like this monotone area of just constant intensities.
a lot of the threat that you find in the green zone is slightly more insidious. It's kind of hidden away. It's not as overt as in the yellow zone where there's military absolutely everywhere, but as you dig deeper into the green zone, you start to understand that, you know, it has its own set of secrets in there, which, you know, I'm not going to go into details in this particular conversation.
The yellow and the green zone represent sort of the progression to the red zone. The green zone starts out as a living normal civilization where people are still going about their daily work. They're still doing their normal things. The yellow zone is more of a camp where things have gone wrong. They've moved people in, they've moved people out. It's a military quarantine zone. No one moves anywhere without moving through checkpoints.
You know, your yellow zone, we really wanted that feeling of oppression. We really wanted that feeling of too many people crowded into a small space. We wanted to make you feel that Genentech is performing experiments on the human population.
With the yellow zone having kind of expanded in such a way that, you know, the shanty towns are spilling out into the streets, what you tend to find at ground level, at least, it's a much more enclosed gameplay space and a much more dense gameplay space, which means that if you get into a fight, it changes your tactical options. So it's just asking different things of the player and requiring them to approach situations in a different way.
The checkpoints are far more important. The places where the military lineup meets the protesters is a far more interesting space than just a space that's completely filled with military or a place that's completely filled with infected.
So as you go through each zone, you really will feel, you know, this is the heart of darkness. This is sort of the safe zone. And this is kind of the, you know, overcrowded, too many people. And even the people within that, the general population, you'll feel that what those people are feeling. You know, when you get to the green zone, you've got people milling about much more naturally. And then when you get to the red zone, you're going to be hard-pressed to find just Joe civilian. You're going to find a lot of infected. You're going to find a lot of people worried for their life.
So the zones are actually unlocked in a linear sequence as you go through the game. You'll start out in the yellow zone, and then through the course of events you get dragged on into the next zone and then the zone after. But once you've unlocked any given zone, you're free to travel between them at will to, you know, complete any of the side missions or other content that you may not have finished there, or things that you want to go back to try and, you know, sort of to improve your performance at, etc. Prototype 2 is still very much a completely open world game where you have total flexibility to go wherever you want and do whatever you want whenever you want.
Hunting is a new expression of Heller's sort of feral, virus-granted abilities. Hunting allows Heller to track down just about anyone in the city once he has a scrap of information or a name or a piece of DNA or something like that, that allows you to find people across long distances.
Hunting is one of the most empowering feelings in the game. You know, most games, you know, they put a marker on somebody in the world and you're like, okay, that's what I'm supposed to get. You've already told me. It takes all the fun out of it. But hunting, really, that pulse is just, it's visceral. I mean, you hear it, you feel it, you see it, and then you just keep honing in, you're honing in, and you're honing in. And then when you see your target and it highlights off of them and you can see their nervous system and you're just like, that's my guy.
We sort of played off of the idea of radar or sonar or organic version of that. where from great distances you'll send this sort of sense out into the world, and you'll get this visual wave of the world back. Big cascading circle, like throwing a rock into a pond.
So from a player's point of view, you find yourself looking for the highest point in the city so that you can kind of view your surroundings all around you, send out this pulse, and use that as a way of basically narrowing in on the target that you're looking for.
To be over the top of someone, right, on the top of a 40-story building, and to send out that pulse, and to see them glow in the middle of the crowd, and then just to leap off the top of that 40-story building and plummet straight down to the ground, right on top of them, and just immediately go into beating them down, right? I mean, not only is that scary as hell for the guy that you're consuming, but imagine what the people around that guy's reaction is, right? Someone just fell out of the sky and landed on a guy and ate him. James Heller is a hunted man in a city inside a police state, and so he's very much on his own. And so he's got to find scraps of information and details about this conspiracy and information about what Blackwatch and Gentek and Alex Mercer are doing in any way he can. One of those is by hunting people down and consuming them with their memories, or to go up to one of these Blacknet terminals, these big satellite vans, and use that person's access codes to log onto the network and figure out what project they were working on, and then to go find that project and destroy it.
We wanted to give the player that opportunity, not just to be able to seek out their target, but to find out about their target in the first place. So this kind of talks to this concept of Blacknet, which is very pervasive throughout the entire Prototype 2 experience.
Blacknet is the encrypted data network that Gentek and Blackwatch use for all the secure transmissions and all of their projects inside of the MIZ.
It's interesting the way all of these different pieces kind of come together, that you go from going to a vehicle in the world and hacking into it to gain details of the operation, through to then launching into a very specific mission because you've found out about, you know, a certain operation that is going on in a dark corner of the world, and then by putting a stop to that, you gain rewards in the form of mutations.
Mutations are another new way in which the virus expresses itself in James Heller. Mutations are exactly what they sound like. They're something that change your DNA, they change your cells, they change your chemical makeup. They are an always on, always running plus to your character, whether that's something that allows you to jump even higher, or something as simple as being bulletproof.
It allows you to define your own character, define your own progression through the story based on what you think is the most beneficial upgrade for your particular playstyle and character type.
Mutations are actually stackable, so they're an additive. So you'll actually find that, you know, when you start combining, you know, jump farther, do 2 air dashes, you know, I mean, you'll start to see that by them being additive and stacking on themselves, you actually become more and more powerful and actually can do a lot more and more cruel and crazy things.
Tango primary is here.